Thank you everyone for coming out. We're going to start with a little introduction for Peta. So Peta Owens is a lover of stories. You could call her a story junkie. She believes that stories connect each other and open our hearts and minds. Along with the What I Thought I Saw exhibit, she has several more, including one called Exit by Text, which is about distracted driving. She is a former Time magazine correspondent and a mom of 2 boys that keep her real. And then let's give her a round of applause. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's a small group. I actually would love it if people moved up a little bit. The energy will be a little bit different than typical because we have a small group, but there might be some more classes coming in. So thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to sharing the What I Thought I Saw project with you, a project I've been working on for the past 8 years with my collaborators, 2 fantastic photographers and another writer. And this project started as a grant-funded book, and it evolved into a 30-piece traveling exhibit. We have one back east and one here, and we also have an ebook. What I Thought I Saw is about judgments and stereotypes. It's about the stories we miss and the mistakes we make because the assumptions we make about other people, generally based on what they look like, or sort of that first mental paragraph of who we have them pegged to be. We all do it, where you know 4 or 5 things about someone, what you can see or what you've heard or overheard, and you start patching together about a story about who they are. The thing is, it's not your story. It's not their story, it's your story that you've built for them. So I'd like to take just a few minutes here and have you take a look around the room. I want you to stare. I'm giving you permission to stare. I want you to let your eyes peruse over the people in the room. And as you do this, try not to screen yourself and be cognizant of the words that come to your mind. And if you want to put on sunglasses, go ahead. And now consider the words that came to mind for those people who were looking at you. It's an uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? Because it's entirely based on their perception of us and not at all on who we actually are. And here's the deal. The more certain and confident we are in our visual intelligence, in what we think we see, the less likely we are to question what we think we see, and the less interested we become in wanting to find out more about that person behind that initial glance. Because of this, we miss out on so many fascinating lives and unexpected stories behind those first few layers of someone. So that's really what the What I Thought I Saw project's all about. It's about the way we see other people and sometimes judge them. It's about how we perceive the world through a highly personal, imperfect, visual lens. And now I would like to take some time to share with you some of the stories my collaborators and I have come across while working on this project. So most of you, when you see this image, probably think, oh, a nun. And if you have any associations with nuns, certain things may come to mind as well. And Mother Antonia is a nun. She's an 85-year-old nun, but her story is much more interesting than that. She's a twice divorced, Beverly Hills socialite, mother of 7 children. And when her youngest was 16, she got him settled, and she headed for the California-Mexico border. And with her, she had a Spanish-English dictionary, a Bible, a blanket, and a pillow. And she knocked on the gates of the La Mesa State Penitentiary, one of the most overcrowded, dangerous prisons in Mexico. There, they gave her a cold, dark cell from which to administer to the prisoners. No crime was too horrific for her kind words or her gestures. She would tell you that she believes in beauty, that she always fell for the most handsome men. She feels like you should feel beautiful on the inside as well as on the outside. And so she convinced dentists to come to fix the smiles of prisoners, thousands of smiles. And she convinced a world-class surgeon to come and fix the birth defects and the scars and the tattoos that had been tattooed on the prisoners' faces, to remove them. Because as these prisoners wanted to find another way to belong and have a fresh start and start over, they wanted those tattoos removed. Now, if you were to strike up a conversation with Alonzo, you may be taken a little bit back. Alonzo speaks in simple, short phrases. Alonzo strong, tiny, bad, Rolling Stones rock. Counting from 1 to 10 is difficult for Alonzo. You see, when he was 3, he suffered severe head trauma. At 12, he was institutionalized, and on hot days, he would peel the tar off of the blacktop or the sealant from around the windows in his room, and he would sculpt these tiny figurines and stash them beneath his bed, where later staff would find them. Today, Alonzo can look at a large animal, like this horse, for example, and after one glance, within minutes, he can sculpt it to near perfection. At the time of this image, Alonzo was estimated to be one of 25 living savants. His work sells for tens and thousands of dollars. And his longtime care provider, Nancy, says being around Alonzo is like being around a miracle. Would you like to meet him? So we've worked with this Goodline. It's a video, these guys who run a video company, and they've done an excellent job catching some of our subjects on video.
It's claiming, that's it. Claiming land. I don't like that. The kind of that me, sounds that's good. He said he's not a part of the world. He's bad. It felt bad. He's not the part of the world. He's evil. I wanted good lives too.
Who are you? Who am I to you? I am the Antichrist to you. Falling from the sky with grace into your arms.
But I like pardon better. I like private better. Art, that's private. Art.
In my heart it shook with fear. I'm a coward behind a shield.
Like the thoroughbred, long leg.
Take this sword and throw.
The Spanish boots, longhorn bullfoot.
Let it shine under the morning star.
The new weed, not too great. I just started over. And then when we counted it, she shared out, not too many people. I think I had to work super after hard. I had to do my way. I mean, gain your strength every day. As I sing big. I like it hard, I don't like soft. Harder, harder. Like a rock. Within the masonry. Yeah, that they learn by the Bible, that they preach Bible. They're happy and peace. So they thank you, doing a good job.
Who are you? Who am I to you?
So when Alonzo, he sometimes goes and speaks to schools, and he'll sculpt for students. And inevitably, one of the kids will ask, why are his eyes so sparkly? Why are his eyes so shiny? And I have to say, that's one of the first things I noticed about him. He just sort of emanates this sense of peace from within. And so you may have noticed that when you watch the video. So there's 4 of us that work on this project. And when Amy, one of the writers, brought this idea of doing a story on Susie to the table, Zoe thought, what possibly could this beautiful blonde bombshell, former playmate, possibly have to teach me? And Zoe did realize the irony of her response. After all, she came up with the idea for what I thought I saw. But Zoe was a good sport, and she and Amy went down over to Vail, Colorado, and they sat around Susie's kitchen table, and they listened to Susie's story. And Susie will tell you that hell is a familiar place, that she recalls when she was 4, her grandfather forced her to lay down in a creek bed and raped her, and she went home to a mother that beat her for getting stains on the back of her dress. She remembers at 5 wishing she were dead. Today, this former playmate travels to Haiti 6 times a year, where she has found a foundation that helps thousands of orphaned, abandoned, handicapped children. She defies State Department orders and even has had a gun held to her head 3 times in one of the world's most poorest cities in the Western Hemisphere. And she says, yes, that she's had a horribly abusive childhood, but it's nothing compared to what her children in Haiti have gone through. She said, I was never left to die. Every one of my children in Haiti was left to die. So when I presented with this, actually Zoe went down to Haiti and took some pictures to see firsthand the work that Susie was doing. And if Zoe was here, she would tell you how dead wrong she was about this beautiful blonde. When I presented this at a nursing conference with nursing students, one of the students wrote in response to Susie's story, I am surprised that someone so beautiful had such dark torture come over them. I thought beautiful women had no problems, just a wonderful life. I am serious, I really have held that belief since I was a little girl and wish I was beautiful. So this is a totally different kind of beauty. Brendan is a commercial litigation attorney for a high-powered conservative law firm in Phoenix, Arizona. He's devoted to his church, a strong supporter of nonprofits, and is absolutely passionate about Asian poetry and art. At the time of this photograph, he had invested more than $20,000 in a piece of artwork that will not outlive him. When I spoke with Brennan, he told me what it was like. He remembered what it was like to get that first tattoo. And he remembers cringing that maybe it was too big. And it was a postage stamp sized picture of a dragon on the inside of his ankle. Many years later, that self-consciousness has given way to confidence and detachment about what other people think. He simply says, people hire me for my brain. Although he will say when he presents in front of a jury, he makes sure that his Brooks Brothers suit covers every millimeter of his tattoo because he doesn't want the jury to judge his client because of him. So I can almost guarantee you, if this room was packed with youth, when this image comes up, what I usually hear is, ooh. Because Chris is good looking, he's handsome. As a matter of fact, People magazine nominated him one of their 50 most beautiful people in one of their issues. And Outside magazine, a cover story titled, Is He Really the World's Best Athlete? Which was about Chris after he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And then when I mentioned that Chris is also paralyzed from the waist down, that same group that went, ooh, I hear, oh. So what Chris hears is, or senses is, ooh, oh. And that is exactly what he doesn't want. He doesn't want people to feel like what he has to bring into the world is diminished in any way by his being paralyzed from the waist down. And he doesn't want to feel like he's disappointing. So Jessica ran on the Democratic ticket for the Utah State Senate. Raised Mormon, parent of 6 kids. When I first met Jessica at a local coffee shop here in Salt Lake City, I envied her immaculate polished nails and her long legs, and she's this classy dresser. And she would giggle like one of my girlfriends and roll her eyes at the things that women roll their eyes at. You see, Jessica is not the mother of her children, she is the father of her children. And as I got to know Jessica better, she shared with me what it felt like to feel like a little girl on the inside, but be a boy on the outside, and later to feel like a woman on the inside, but be a man on the outside. At 6, when we moved next door to 3 girls, I'm in heaven, playing dress-ups and ballet and taking care of dolls. One day I come home in a dress. My father beats me. I stop trying to be me. At 17 in high school, he says I'm a good boy off the football field. I do what the church tells me to do and excel at it. Inside, I rage. As a grown man, married, he recalls sitting in the car, and when his wife leaves her purse sitting next to him, he pretends it is his own. So just a show of hands, how many in here stereotype? Anybody? Wow, you're in good company, because it's human, the stereotype. We all stereotype. It's how we make sense of the world we live in. It's how we navigate it. What we do is we visually take in information, we put it into categories. And these categories are not necessarily bad or good, they're just different. We might do it based on color, or we might do it based on shape, or we might do it based on flavor. And we do it with things, and we do it with living beings. As a matter of fact, our survival depends on our ability to stereotype. We have to be able to make a snap decision about a situation or a person, otherwise we might be in danger. Imagine our early ancestors in the jungle, glimpsing something coming towards them. They have to figure out pretty quick whether that's a warthog or a tiger. It's the difference between catching dinner, if you like warthog meatloaf, or being dinner. It's not all that different in modern times when a police officer shows up at an emergency situation and has to decipher pretty quick whether the object in somebody's hand is a cell phone or a gun. And chances are that officer's preconceived ideas about that individual or the group that individual belongs to will come into play in making his or her decision. Also left over from our early ancestral period, what you might call an evolutionary hangover, is this natural sort of subliminal tendency to be attracted to people that look like ourselves. Which is why when you walk into a crowded room and you're looking for a seat, or you're getting on the bus or tracks and you're looking for some place to sit, subliminally you're looking for a seat to sit down next to someone who looks like yourself. Because research shows that we assume if people look like us, they'll behave like us. And the reason we do this is because in tribal times, it was kind of important to stick close to your tribe, to stick by those people that look like you. Because the venture out, you were seen as a stranger or an enemy. But we no longer live in tribal times, and sometimes really good things happen when you plop yourself down next to someone who looks absolutely nothing like you. The only caveat I have here is I do think that that the gang mentality still sort of lives in that tribal mentality, sadly. So our brains are hardwired to look for two dimensions: malignant and benign intent, bad and good intentions. So as we visually take in information, we're looking for visual cues that clue us into whether someone's friendly and approachable, or dominant and angry. We're looking for friend or foe. And as a matter of fact, we use up to half our brains in visual processing. And image processing is the fastest of all our senses, which means that we are first and foremost being informed of the world around us through our vision. So this thought process always takes me back to when I lived in Washington, D.C. And I had a night class, and I would pop off the subway late at night, and I would walk out of the subway, and I'd be on a dark, deserted street. And inevitably, there'd be one other person walking down that street towards me, a man. And my brain would go into this mode, and I would start looking for visual cues that were going to clue me into whether I should walk by him or whether I should cross the street and walk faster. So we all do this. What makes it complicated is we bring our own beliefs and emotions and feelings into what those visual cues are. And that's what makes it complicated. So we've been really fortunate because we've had the opportunity to work with Dr. White, a psychology professor up at the University of Utah, on this project. And he's helped us understand a lot about stereotyping and the research behind it. And actually, if he were here today, he would tell you that he's a walking, talking example of a what I thought I saw. He says he's a Catholic from the Deep South, a Republican who voted for President Obama, and a black man named Dr. White, which I think names have their own little what I thought I saw. I grew up with a friend whose dad was Dr. Payne. He was a pediatrician. I don't know how well that went over. Anyways, while we all do stereotype, the point at which it becomes really negative and limiting is when we overgeneralize so much, or we're so rigid in our beliefs about who somebody is that we really box them in. And we also box in our own thinking, because we really limit our engagement with the world around us when we box people in. And let's face it, most of our engagement with the world around us is through people. So Dr. Paul White points out that there's another reason why we stereotype, and that's to secure a sense of worth from our identities, either as an individual or as a group. And so what we do is we compare ourselves to those we perceive as being less worthy. So less popular, less attractive, less well-educated, less wealthy, less prestigious position. And we do this in order to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Sadly, this process of social comparisons is proving to be pretty close to a need. But if you're aware of your thought processes, you can catch yourself and create that pause, making yourself step back and determine how you want to interact as opposed to react to someone. So So confirmation bias. He also brings up that we are incredibly stubborn about hanging on to our stereotypes. As humans are really persistent about wanting to believe what we want to believe to be true about people in the world, to the point that we will only look for information that confirms our stereotype, and will ignore or dismiss information that counters it. And this process is known as confirmation bias. David McRaney elaborates on this idea of confirmation bias. He wrote this great engaging book called You Are Not So Smart. And he said, we think our opinions are rational and objective, but really they've been formed by years and years of paying attention to information that supports what we believe to be true about people in the world rather than challenges it. He says we're fooling ourselves, that we're getting information on a handful of news sites, when really what we're doing is going to the same 5 media outlets for the information that we want. He says increasingly we are getting our information from sources that think as we already do. And if you think about it, what stations do you have your radio program to? Or what channels do you have your television program to? Or what magazines do you subscribe to? Or what apps do you have downloaded? And then you consider these sophisticated algorithms woven into the web that study your search history, mirroring back at you your tastes, your opinions, your interests. How many of you have ordered a book from Amazon? And when you order a book from Amazon, it pops up and goes, oh, well, if you like this book, you'll probably like A, B, and C in the same vein. So here we live in this time of modern technology where we have unprecedented access to more information than we've ever had before at our fingertips, and more diverse points of view than we've ever had before. But we also have the ability to completely block out that information that we disagree with. So remember that early ancestor in the jungle who had to make that snap decision? He had to keep his mind really focused and uncluttered in order to make that decision. And we all strive to keep an uncluttered, focused mind, especially as we navigate a jungle of information coming at us every single day. Check out these stats. You're faced with around 11 million pieces of information at any given moment. The brain can only process about 40 of those bits of information. So it creates shortcuts and uses past knowledge to make assumptions. So as we navigate this jungle of information coming at us every day, one of the quickest, most efficient tools is stereotyping. It's much easier to have a few ideas about people we can apply broadly, freeing up our mind for more important tasks or thoughts. I need some water. Thank you. Freeing up our mind for more important tasks and thoughts. But the thing is, people and the world are not tidy and uncluttered. And the more we streamline our thinking like this, we have to ask ourselves, are we missing out on some deeper engagement with humanity? So labels. I call labels the sidekick to stereotyping because, like stereotyping, we are assuming a lot about someone based on very little information. And like stereotyping, the feelings we bring to that label or stereotype will impact the way we treat someone. And labels can really mislead us. They objectify people, they depersonalize people, they allow us to treat people rudely, disrespectfully, even be mean and cruel to people we see first and foremost as a label. Consider what you read or what you listen to, what are the words used to describe people? Do they objectify someone or do they humanize someone? Is it illegal alien or is it undocumented worker? Alien, worker, what's more human? Is it a gay person or is it a sexual deviant? Labels can move entire groups of people against other people. You see it in hate propaganda all the time. So I've started this little experiment over the last 9 months, and I've heard some really positive things from it. And you know, next time you're spouting off a label in your head or your mind, one you bring a negative bias to, consider putting 2 words behind it. Maybe instead of, oh, she's a slut, say, oh, she's a slut human being. Or, oh, look at that crazy mentally ill person. Or change it to mentally ill human being. Or that dirty, homeless human being. And notice the mind shift that takes place. It creates a pause, giving you that chance, again, to interact as opposed to react. All right, well, so we've talked about some serious stuff here. I'd like to switch over to the name of this project, What I Thought I Saw. Does everyone feel like they have a pretty good sense of what a What I Thought I Saw is? A What I Thought I Saw moment? A What I Thought I Saw moment, I'll give you some examples from my own life or ones I've heard. So in a matter of about 10 days, I was pulled over by a cop twice for speeding. So the next time I saw a police officer on the freeway with his lights on and he pulled someone over, I was rolling my eyes. I thought, oh, they're at it again. You know, why can't they go out and get murderers and rapists and, you know, armed robberies, and instead of these frazzled mothers who are speeding too fast to get their kids to school? And as I'm thinking this, I'm passing his car. It's even, you know, it's out in the road a little bit, blocking traffic, so you kind of have to go around it. And as I'm thinking this, I pass the car. There he is, the cop. His sleeves are rolled up, and he's on the ground, changing a flat tire, and next to him is an elderly gentleman. And it was this sort of like, oh, yeah, they're not all how I was perceiving them to be. Another example is a friend of mine was getting on tracks with her granddaughter. And she said, you know, her granddaughter's 3 years old, and they were going to the Children's Museum. And she said there were 2 really scary-looking guys on there. They weren't together because they were scary-looking. And so they ended up standing next to one of these guys, and the one guy looked at her and looked down at her granddaughter, looked back up at her, and then said, yeah, isn't she cute? She was really taken back. So what I thought I saw moments are surprises about people. But to have a what I thought I saw moment, or implicit in a what I thought I saw moment, is a willingness to be open to the element of surprise. I want to share some what I thought I saw moments with you that are sort of more on a universal level, by sharing 3 musicians who defy traditional stereotypes. Now, how many of you recognize her? Susan Boyle, who was on America Has Talent, or Britain's Got Talent, actually, a number of years ago. And when she came onto the stage, you know, what people saw was this frumpy 47-year-old Scottish spinster. But a few moments into her performance of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Mis, her stunningly beautiful voice completely unraveled the audience's collective stereotype. And you notice that when she came in, the disapproval of the judges and the audience was palatable.
Hi, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Blackburn near Bathgate, West Lothian.
It's a big town.
It's a sort of collection of villages. I had to think there.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've never been given the chance before, but here's hoping it'll change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine
somebody like
Page.
that.
What are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables.
Okay.
Big song.
Yeah? Yes.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by, when hopes my life was living.
You didn't expect that, did you? Did you? No.
I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. I was young and unafraid, when dreams were made and used and wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come with their voices soft as thunder, as they tear your hopes apart, as they turn your dreams to shame. Still I dream it come to me. And we live our lives together. But there are dreams which cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream my life would be so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seems. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed.
Hello.
Hey, come back here.
All right. Thank you very much, Susan. Piers.
Without a doubt, that was the biggest surprise I have had in 3 years on this show. When you stood there with that cheeky grin and said, I want to be like Elaine Page, everyone was laughing at you. No one is laughing now. That was stunning, an incredible performance. Amazing. I'm reeling from shock about you two, but
I am
Can't
so
believe it.
thrilled because I know that everybody was against you. I honestly think that we were all being very cynical, and I think that's the biggest wake-up call ever. And I just want to say that it was a complete privilege listening to that. It was brilliant.
Susan, I knew the minute you walked out
Oh, Simon!
on that stage that we were going to hear something extraordinary, and I was right.
Not a lot of touch.
Susan, you are a little tiger, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know about that.
You
I
are.
don't know about that.
Okay, moment of truth. Piers, yes or no?
the biggest yes I have ever given anybody.
Amanda?
Yes, definitely. It's brilliant.
Susan Boyle, you can go back to the village with your head held high. It's 3 yeses.
performance. It quickly went viral, accumulating over 100 million hits. Her first album broke records in Great Britain for the most first albums sold ever. And it spawned a New York Times article titled, Looks Do Matter. Why do we stereotype based on lookisms? So Susan Boyle forced us all to step back and really reconsider our assumptions and admit that we were wrong. Anybody recognize this guy? Yeah. So he's the sort of guy you sort of expect to see on a subway in New York, maybe getting off at a Brooklyn stop. This is Matisyahu, and he's a Hasidic Jew, Orthodox Jew. Orthodox Jews believe they have sort of strict rules. They believe like boys and girls shouldn't go to school together, no screens, no computers or televisions at home, and they celebrate their Sabbath on Friday, which is why you'll never find Matisyahu performing on a Friday night. He is the world's first Hasidic hip-hop reggae superstar. See if you can say that 5 times as fast as you can. Hasidic hip-hop reggae superstar. Let's watch how he performs.
Some of them looking for fun, some of them looking for a way out of confusion. Some of them don't know what to be, some of them don't know what to go. Some of them trust their instincts that something's missing from the show. Some don't teach us science and in science are crying low. Some of them teachers watch the flame for it and a chance to grow. Some of them embers still glow, them charcoal hush and low. Some of them come with a hunger suppressed, not let them feel the death blow. Yo, young man, control in your hands, slam your fist on the table and make your demand. Take a stand, fan the fire for the flame of the youth. Got the freedom to choose, you better make the right move.
So last I heard that Matisyahu had shaved his beard and moved to Los Angeles, so he may be reinventing himself. Does she look like a rocker? When Mary walked into a music store in La Crosse, Wisconsin, I think the employees there thought she probably was there to buy a gift or some gifts for her grandchildren, but Mary doesn't have grandchildren. She had come into the store because of the demo drum kit. So apparently Mary was in the first all-girls rock band in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and they were on the road a lot, and she said it was hard because they often got heckled and given a hard time because people didn't really think there should be an all-girls rock band, or girls shouldn't be in a rock band. But she's pretty good, isn't she? So I encourage you, as you head out into the world after today, to notice all those what I thought I saw moments around you. And they might be as complicated as finding out that your city council member is not the mother of her children, but their father, or as delightful as learning that a 95-year-old grandmother can still slide down into the splits, though she does need help up. Or it may simply be not looking away when something makes you uncomfortable. As you can imagine, David has felt ashamed about the way he looks for most of his life, often dealing with unkind or awkward reactions of those around him. But when he was 40, David embraced his facial disfigurement, and he became a humorist and an inspirational speaker. And as he spoke to audiences all across the country, sometimes audiences as large as 1,000 people, and people would come up and talk to him after, he started figuring out that, everybody feels like they have some sort of flaw or, quote, disfigurement that they have to hide or feel ashamed of. He says that I have come to accept myself and reveal myself as an astonishingly beautiful person. I think helps others accept who they are, allowing them to see that people can be good as well as flawed. So this exhibit is filled with people full of flaws and vulnerabilities. I hope you have time to look at the exhibit out in the atrium. To be human is to have vulnerabilities, to be differences, to have differences. And to be compassionate is to honor those differences and vulnerabilities in others as well as in ourselves. So I'd like to send you away with 3 challenges. To mind your mind, be more aware of your own biases and judgments and stereotypes about others. Try to see people in a fresh and unprejudiced way. Find ways to create that pause that gives you that distance in order to interact as opposed to react with people. Yes, doubt yourself. Be curious. Often our certainty gets in the way of our curiosity. Let yourself wonder about people. Wonder more about what they might be like. Don't feel like you have them pegged based on a label or an observation. Remember, implicit in what I thought I saw moment is that willingness to be open to the element of surprise. Peel the onion. So often when I present, I use the analogy that we're all onions. Guess why? Because we're layers, we're filled with layers. Yeah, and we need to learn to peel back the layers of the people of those around us to get to the backstory. And so be curious, because when we're curious, we naturally suspend judgment. And we could be curious with inquisitive questions. So push yourself to discover people's backstories, to peel back the layers of who somebody is. So I leave you with those 3 challenges. Thank you for your time today, and thank you to Abio and his team for arranging this. I hope you have time to see the What I Thought I Saw exhibit, which is up in the atrium right now. Thank you. Although if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take questions. We have time here. Anybody, any curiosities? You in the front row. Right, when you see something like, for example, like a word or a movement or a person. A person, I know that they have a certain disease that I've never heard of. Okay, yeah. Look that up and then understand it, and that will make Okay, that's great. So that's in a way in which the internet can really open our minds. Pardon me? Yes, I will. So Abby was saying how actually the internet can help open her mind to different types of people and different things because she'll discover something she doesn't know a lot about, and she'll Google it and, for example, learn more about a disease somebody has and then understand more about that person with that disease. Anybody else? And I'm going to let you guys talk into this.
I have two questions. The first one is, how long have you been working on this project for? And the second question is, how do you, I'm guessing you went through a lot of stories and a lot of people to find, how did you decide which ones and which ones not to use?
Yeah, those are good questions. So this project we've been working on for 8 years. There's still stories that evolve. Whether we bring new stories to it or not depends on funding and time, but we have a list of other What I Thought I Saw stories we'd love to do. How we find our stories. So, as I mentioned, there's 4 of us that work on this, and so sometimes it's through word of mouth, sometimes it's through things we read, and sometimes we'll have an idea of a type of story we want to tell. For example, I did a story on Barbara in the exhibit, and Barbara is an attorney and a world traveler and makes a lot of money. She's a businesswoman, and she's also the 3rd wife of a polygamist. And when I was covering stories for Time magazine, I did a lot of stuff on polygamy, and I had heard about a woman who was a doctor, and she was a polygamist. And I thought, wow, that would fit into what I thought I saw. Because for me, I kind of have this stereotype of what a polygamous woman would be like. And so, unfortunately, I couldn't arrange that interview. That she had been burned before and was not willing to take that risk again. But my contact said, hey, we know somebody else that might be interested. And so that's how I found Barbara. Some stories got away, you know. There was one I wanted to do on a Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and who just looked like a Marine, talked like a Marine, just everything about them just strong. Because this is at the time when post-traumatic stress disorder was just starting to percolate a lot because of the conflict. And I found a guy through the Wounded Warrior Project, and boy, he was all Marine. I'd say 110% Marine. And he had been injured, and he agreed to speak with me. And so before I would go interview, I would do a preliminary phone interview. I mean, I'd met him, but then he went back to Texas. And so while I was on the phone, I asked him a few questions, and boom, he was back in Afghanistan, or in Iraq actually, at the ambush. At the moment, for the next 45 minutes, he told me minute by minute what happened, how he almost died. And I knew when I was listening to him I was going to lose him, because it was too soon for him to be talking about it like that. And it was a stunning story, but he had terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. And so here you have this really strong guy who's constantly scared and paranoid, and always alert and looking around, you know, getting up in the middle of the night to check the perimeters of the house. You know, you have that juxtaposition. So some of them got away, but so they're all over the place. And the stories we have are rather extraordinary stories. There's more ordinary, What I Thought I Saw stories too. Anybody else?
I had 2 questions. One of them kind of goes along with Max's question, but the first one, when I came in, the video was going over a guy who does the sculptures out of clay, and I noticed, you know, it's kind of hard to follow the words sometimes, but I noticed that it said that he was committed. I was kind of curious, as like for 10 years he was committed, what he was committed for, if you're able to say.
That's Alonzo, and he was committed. I believe his family put him in an institution that he had to stay in, and so that's what they were talking about. Alonzo, the videographers, I thought, did a wonderful job because they decided, instead of having their voice in it, Alonzo was a very difficult interview, as you can imagine, because most of my information comes from the person that I'm interviewing, and Alonzo is not very articulate or very talkative and has a lot to say. So what they did is they made it all his voice, all his own, without putting themselves in it, which I thought worked out really well. And so for me to interview Alonzo, I depended a lot on his care provider and friend, Nancy, and then just being with him. So he suffered. So what caused him to be in an institution? Is that your question? He suffered severe brain damage at 3. It's not really clear how. He's what's known as a savant. Who knows what a savant is? The term that used to be used was idiot savant, which isn't so politically correct anymore. But if you've seen Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman, they kind of based him off of Alonzo a bit. And so when you're a savant, you have a part of your brain that is incredibly developmentally challenged. And then you have another part of your brain that's absolutely brilliant. And Alonzo was institutionalized for not being able to really care for himself, and he's come a long way. I mean, he lives almost independently now, but that's why he was institutionalized. Anybody else? These are great questions. Anybody in the back or over here?
So I know you've had like an incredible amount of stories you've gone through. Was there one in particular that really like inspired you or really stood out to you about a person?
Wow. They all inspire me. Some are more humbling than others. This is the book. I almost attempted to look in the book at the stories. I can tell you one of the most difficult one was the one I did on Jessica. So when I met Jessica, I had to really, to do these stories, you sort of have to slip into someone else's reality for a little while, like step in their shoes and go, okay, so what does the world look like from your perspective? And authentically really try and understand what you feel like. And so Jessica, Jessica was a man who was a woman, felt more comfortable being a woman. And so it took me a while to kind of get that and understand that. I mean, sexuality is such that's a difference. That's one of the differences people get judged on really harshly sometimes in this world. And so understanding her there, and then I had written it, and then Jessica started going through, she started feeling like that she actually could go back to being a man now. And so I wrote another story on why Jessica was making that transition back to a man. And so I had to, again, really get in there and understand what prompted this transformation to be taking place. And I mean, essentially it comes down to Jessica, who became Derek, basically said he believes in people being twin-spirited, having both in you, both femininity and masculinity, which is interesting because in some cultures, like there's a culture in New Guinea, I think, where they have a ceremony for kids when they're 13 and they choose what gender they want to be from that point on. So this sort of possibility that, people might be twin-spirited, you could maybe go either way. So I had to understand that and write another story from really a different perspective on the same person. One that stays with me that was just so happens every day, and it's because I really wanted a story where someone could be like, well, I was on this side, experienced the world like this, and then boom, I got to experience it like this. Like, for example, I experienced the world as being a white person for a month and then experience the world being a black person for a month, but you can't do that. But I found someone who experienced the world being incredibly obese and then experienced the world being quite slender. I mean, she lost all her weight. And so I was really interested in like, so what changed? Did you change? Or did how people treat you change? And there's a story out there on Carol, and it was fascinating because, you know, she started getting promotions, she started being asked to present. Instead of just doing the research and not presenting it, she, the world started treating her a lot better because she looked so completely different. And so all the stereotyping and assumptions and judgment that go along with body image. Anybody else? No, since you've asked one, I'm going to let her ask, and then I'll come back to you.
So, because I was late, I'm not sure, but how did these people, did they come to you? How did you choose them, or did they choose you?
Well, first let me say that most of the people in this exhibit, in this book, would not necessarily hang out with each other. I mean, they might be as judgmental as each other, you know, judged others with them in this book. We found them and approached them, and then sometimes we had to convince them. You know, we tell them about the project and be honest about the other people in the project with them. Most of them, I mean, were incredibly courageous and brave and raw and honest about sharing their stories. And I think one of the things that motivated them to share their stories was wanting to break down some of those stereotypes. Sort of the greater message of what comes from this project is what they were interested in, even though they might not like, you know, someone that's on page 15 of the book. And then you had one.
I just wanted to know, because you said it's yourself and 3 other people that work on this project, so 4 in total. I was curious on your perspective on, I mean, sometimes you can be friends with someone your entire life, know someone your entire life, and they won't open up these kind of things to you. So what steps and processes do you take? Because, I mean, in a lot of cases, you're diving into some really deep-seated personal issues, you know, so how do you get people to open up? How do you get people to open up about that kind of stuff? Sorry.
No, so what's your name? Greg. So Greg was asking, like, how do you really get people to tell you these stories, because they're personal. And I think, I think whether you're talking to someone to write a story on them, or whether you're talking to someone to connect with them, just to figure out who they are, it takes a lot of attentive listening and empathy. I mean, you can't really fake the empathy. It's got to be real, and a really strong willingness to understand. Like, I do want to get this. I really want to understand where you're coming from. You know, we didn't have time today, but I do this exercise called the onion exercise, where I had mentioned peeling back the layers, where the people in the room peel back, they find someone they don't know and they peel back the layers of the onion of that person using questions, and we kind of go through, like, so what's that outer layer look like? It's everything you can observe and see. It might be an accent. It might be, you know, the clothes someone's wearing. It might be whether they have piercings, or even the car they drive, or the neighborhood, the kind of house they live in. But moving beyond that to that next layer, so what are some questions that peel back that next layer? And you know, it sounds so simple, moving beyond labels and stereotypes, but so often many of us don't take the time or make the effort or put ourselves out there a little bit to ask those questions, to peel back the layers. And so I won't go all into like the questions, but you know, you peel back the first layer, which leads to questions for the second layer. And it just, stories start coming out. There's so much more dimension to the person. But it's kind of like that. And then usually in that process, there's some sharing you have to share too. It can't all be one person sharing. So Though, like in this situation where I'm writing the story, I'm going to limit what I'm going to share. I still want, you know, if they ask me a question or there's an opportunity for me to share something where we can connect, I do. Anybody else? All right. Well, it was a small group, but a great group. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.